Why am I suddenly incapable of baking brownies that are chewy and not cakey?
My cats snuggle together so hard sometimes, I have to tell them to get a room.
That warm, fuzzy feeling when someone pulls out dangerously late in front of you and then goes under the speed limit for several miles.
Who needs to go to the theater when there's a family of deer performing their version of the Nutcracker right outside my window?
Have such a good day. Welcome back to Have Such a Good Day, the show that desperately wants you to do just that.
Hi, patrons and newcomers and humans and creatures of all shapes and sizes. How's it going out there?
Yeah, how's it going? By the way, if you're not a patron and you're like, what's that? You can go to patreon.com/have such a good day and find out all about how to directly support our show.
That's right.
But yeah, you may have come from, who knows where you came from. You crawled out from somewhere. Good to see you, though.
Crawled out from under some kind of rock, like we all have in the last year.
Oh my gosh, I lifted up like not a brick, but it's like, I don't know, it's hard to explain. There's like these like stones that are around my property that I don't know, they're like decorative, whatever. And I pulled up one, and like the weird bugs that were under it were just so like, where I'm just like, I don't know what species I'm looking at. Like they weren't like potato bugs.
They weren't sow bugs?
No,
They're like little gray, like,
I don't know what they were. It was less like that I was grossed out and more that I was just like, what are you?
I know, and like, why are you living under this pot? Aren't you getting squashed? I mean,
Right.
I know.
like you really had to like jam yourself in there, bug.
And how did you
what's
get there in the
happening?
first place?
Yeah. You came up from the center of the earth. I don't know.
This is true. Well, you know, if you guys are tuning in for the first time, this is a friendly reminder that we are the show that unpacks the absurdity of everyday life for your entertainment. I mean, hopefully you're entertained. We certainly are, right, Sarah?
Yeah, I'm entertained by the internet network issues that I had this morning. Shortly before Heather and I started the show, it was sort of a mad scramble. The internet issues are on my side. It's, you know, it's going on with my network here, and because of course, as luck would have it, the Airbnb people who are staying here currently are doing work from here, and that's fine. I mean, that's totally. We have a
Part of
really
the
fast
deal.
network. That's part of. You know, we sell that as like, hey, this is a great place to like do work, super fast internet. We got gigabit. You're good. And so it was not only me saying, Heather, hold on, I'm trying to fix the internet, but the guest being like, yo, we can't Zoom right now. This is a huge issue. What's happening? You know, where I'm like, oh my God, too many people talking to me.
Oh, God, you don't want to miss a precious Zoom. Let me tell
really
you.
don't. I know.
You know, I had a bit of a tech nightmare last night, a bit of a sci-fi nightmare. That Simply Safe kit that I got, I still haven't set it up, and I've had it for a couple weeks, and I've sort of just been like, I just don't feel like doing it ever. But I finally set up like my little 4-digit code on my little keypad and plugged in the main, you know, base station. And so we're watching a movie, and it's like starting to talk to us and like beep and do
Now,
all these things. And
what is this? Like a security system?
yeah, it's a security system called
Okay.
Simply Safe, and it's supposed to be like the easiest thing to set up ever. And like I've just been dragging my feet, but I started to do it yesterday, and I actually hit a wall right away because you have to put in your Wi-Fi password on this keypad that's just numbers, and our password is like a word, so it like we can't get through. So anyway, I hit a wall, so I was like, I'll do it later. Put the thing in the corner, is still plugged in. I go over there, and it's like it's talking to us in like late in the evening, and so I go and plug it, and it's still talking to me, and it's still, you know, churning.
Oh my God, it's like the smoke alarm where you're like, I took
Yes.
the batteries
No,
out. How are
I'm
you
telling
alive?
you, and I'm trying to take the thing off. Like, this is like before we go to bed. We're like, this thing is still talking, and I took the, you know, the outside cap off, and there's like these kind of battery that are like embedded in there. I mean, there's no way I could take them out. And I mean, this thing is still going like all night long, just like talking to us. And it's not plugged in. It's wild. I'm like, okay, like I might have to return this thing. This is a lot harder than I thought. I wouldn't call it simple. Anyway, I'll keep you guys posted on that.
Oh, internet issues.
Yeah.
It's weird because I'm pretty good at troubleshooting these sorts of things.
Yeah, you
I
are.
also, work from home. I do audio and video, streaming stuff, some of it live, every weekday. It's like really important that the internet doesn't go down, and shit happens. But
shit really does happen.
But this particular issue was just, it's weird too, because, I'm up early and, I'm kind of puttering around, kind of doing my, my internet-y things before I knew that Heather and I were going to do the show. And it's like the first thing I do every morning, get out of bed, I get the pot of coffee going, and then I won't say her name, Amazon's assistant, we all know who I mean. I have this routine where I say good morning and all the lights go on, I hear my weather, then I get my news briefing. And it's like, it just sort of like the house just sort of, comes alive. And I have more than one speaker. I say upstairs because I'm downstairs in my studio right now, but I have 3 speakers that, kind of, when I say the wake word, they do their thing. And one of those speakers is in the bathroom, and I have it set up so depending on where my voice is coming from, because I don't need all the speakers barking back stuff at me. Like if I'm not in the studio, I don't need my studio speaker to do anything. And the network knows like, oh, you're closer to this one, so like this is what, this is the one that you're talking to.
Sure.
But this morning when I say good morning, and it's like I can hear, and I'm like in my kitchen, the bathroom's like not near me, and I can hear the speaker in there kind of like burp, burp, where I'm like, why is she like turning on in there? Like I'm like not in the bathroom right now. Like, this is not a normal issue. It was like the first indication that something was off.
Well, it's really
but I
funny
was like, I don't know, like Amazon is just being weird, whatever. Like I just won't hear my news briefing.
Or it's
like,
technology coming back to haunt us. I see this in the future. Like just like the AI is just getting smarter.
It was the beginning of the end. Then I'm like, Google Docs won't load. That's weird. Maybe Google Docs is down. And then it was like, the Airbnb people were like, hey, issues. And I was like, come on,
Happy
man.
Monday.
Come on. Yeah.
Just go back to bed, Sarah. That's my advice to you.
I actually, I didn't have the greatest weekend of sleep. And I'm really have been on a roll of really good sleep, which is like a lot of things go into it, like, eating well, hydrating, exercising hard, like by the end of the day, like I have to be physically depleted.
Yeah.
And then I sleep really well, and you go to bed, don't go to bed too late. Don't eat anything weird right before bed, all of the things. And I'm pretty good about that because I am a person who thrives on a schedule. Like a rigid schedule for me is like, I mean, sure, like throw a wrench in, something now and then. But for the most part, I like to like be like, here's what I do for this hour.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to move on to this thing. And then I got a couple free hours. So, get other things done, blah, 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 blah. By the end of the day, I'm tired and I've gotten my things done. A lot of people operate that way, but over the weekend, I did this really fun sailing trip. Well, I say sailing trip. I mean, we were out on the bay, San Francisco Bay, for a few hours. It wasn't like a trip. But friends of mine have a sailboat, and I haven't been sailing with them in years. But we went out on Saturday and it was super fun. And sailing is like kind of intense.
Yeah.
Especially when it's a windy day. I mean, not only, I don't really know like how to sail. I know like how to duck when the thing comes over from one side to the other, and I know how to hold on, and I don't get like too scared when it seems like we're about to tip over. Because I know we won't, and that's why my friend Frank is, he's at the helm because he understands sailing. Yeah. But because of that, it was like, so that was kind of a weird day. Like, so Saturday was just like, oh, the routine is totally different, And then, we're kind of like, we had a bunch of snacks. And so we're kind of just like eating whatever. And there was a little bubbly that somebody opened. And then we went to like a house party afterwards.
Oh, wow.
And they were making tacos. And it was just like, it was just like a fun day. And by the end of the day, I had left my dog, my beautiful dog Otis, with my mom, because there's just like no way he can go on a sailboat, especially a small one. And I walk in the door and she goes, wow, you got some sun. And I'm like, shit, really? Because I totally was like wearing a hat, sunscreen, the whole thing, but you just can't help it.
No, you can't.
Especially when you're out on the water, and it's like, I don't want to get sun, I'm like, I'm trying to like preserve my youth. No more sun for Sarah. Like I am in a post-sun world for the rest of my life. So I'm like, I don't want someone to be like, oh, you got a bunch of sun. Cause I'm like, that just means more aging.
Yep.
So yesterday, so that was, a couple days ago. And so yesterday, I'm not sunburned, but I felt it. You know that
Oh
feeling where
yeah.
you're like, I feel just like kind of overly tired and
Yep.
sluggish because I sort of put my body through a little bit of a beating. And yeah, I mean, come on, man. I mean, it's crazy how much I don't bounce back anymore.
I know you got to use aloe and have like some sun salves. That's what I use because it's the same for me. Even if I slather the SPF on and I wear a hat and I'm out in the garden, it's frustrating. It's like I
Yeah.
still get sun and I just can't seem to protect my neck enough. And because it's like the different angles that, your neck is shadowed a lot, but then it's not. I mean, how can I be that? It's like hard to be perfect, Sarah.
It is hard. You know what I've also always wondered? I mean, I've wondered this because I used to be quite the sun worshiper.
Yeah, me too.
It was, as tan as possible, always the goal, right?
Yeah.
And, it's hard to believe that I was that person, but I definitely was. That said, I have never, and I can get really tan, but I have to work at
too.
it. But if
Yeah.
I don't, like if you do it in a stupid way, like I will totally burn, because I'm actually naturally really fair. But I've always noticed that two things will never burn. Like no matter, I could sleep outside, in 95 degrees in the hot sun. My feet will never burn and my
Wow.
ears will never burn.
Wow.
It's like
That's
two parts of
interesting.
my body that just are incapable of
'Cause
getting
seriously,
sunburned.
a foot sunburn really hurts. That's a bad one.
never-
I've gotten that before, like the top of my
Never
feet.
Never had a foot sunburn.
How interesting.
Never had my ears burn. And I always, when I put on sunscreen in the morning, I always, coat my ears a little bit because I'm like, yeah, the ears are out, right?
Yeah.
I've gotten burned on my scalp of my head. So it's like, it's not as if somehow the rest of my head is like immune. There's something about
Yeah,
just
that is odd.
the non-burning of the ears. And I don't want to like keep trying it out. I mean,
No.
eventually.
Well, it's funny. I was a sun worshiper too. I mean, I am amazed that my skin is in as good shape as it is because I'd get sunburned like every single day of my childhood. And I mean, I was super sporty. And there's a photograph of me on the tennis team. You wouldn't recognize me. I have like a beautiful tan, like even beautiful tan, top to bottom.
I
and
feel
it's
like I've seen you with a tan.
Yeah,
I
you
mean, like
probably
coming back
have.
from vacation and stuff.
Yeah, and I tan really really quickly, like when I go to Hawaii and that kind of thing. And I miss it. I miss that feeling. I really do because I'm pretty pale right now. In fact, I wore short shorts this weekend because it was really hot. It was humid and hot, and it was like the only thing I could wear. And my boyfriend took a picture of me in my shorts. It's a long story. They're these shorts that a friend gave me, and I wanted to show her that I was wearing them. And I mean, my legs are like, wow. Like I can't, I need a tan. Like I just really need a tan. But at the same time, I'm like, no, I shouldn't.
Well, it's all yeah. I mean, it's some sort of perceived that makes you look better somehow because
It's true.
The way that I feel is, well, I don't know. I mean, the standards of beauty, they're always changing. But
Yeah.
back in the day, when tanning was like, I mean, not everybody is like, oh, tanning's cool. Some people have never felt that way, but. For me, it was like you look skinnier and you look healthier the darker that you are.
Yep.
And, now I'm like, wow, looking skinnier is like almost the opposite of what I'm going for. I'm like always trying to like, I want my muscles to show a little bit more. I want to look healthy. I want to look,
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to like be like, oh, I'm like beefy, but like that whole sort of like, oh, thinner is better is like, yeah, that is not the standard of beauty that I am aspiring to anymore. I know some
agree.
people are, but a lot of people, I don't know. I just feel like that whole wafy thing is hopefully, on the back burner
I know.
for some
I
time.
want to gain weight. I'm like trying to like gain weight. I mean, without being unhealthy. That's the problem. It's like, sure, I'd love to eat like 4 donuts a day. I love donuts, but they make me feel ill. So I'm eating lots of avocados and trying to be, not cut out any fat. But it's like, I don't know. I think like at our age, you're either going to be, you are who you are genetically. And I don't even know if I can pack on any pounds anymore. I'm like, I don't know. But I guess there's worse problems out there.
There are worse problems, like your internet going down and everyone freaking the fuck out. Oh my God. It's just, oh God. It just, that feeling where we all have it. And some people are like, oh, like I don't even understand what a router is kind of thing. It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, that is super frustrating, right? Because you're just like, I don't know how to like fix anything because I don't even know what's wrong. And when something like that happens over here, it's like, well, I don't know what's wrong either, but I know the steps to take to pinpoint the problem. Even if I can't fix it, I can at least find where the problem is, and then, let's go from there, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's like, and it's so easy to, because I do this with lots of other things, where I just get super frustrated when something doesn't work properly, and I'm like, but it was working before. And the person who's like there to fix it is like, yeah, but it isn't now. Like it's sort of like if my I don't know, like if there was a plumbing issue, right? Like I would be the person who's like, but like the toilet flushed fine yesterday. And they're like, okay, but now there's a problem, so it's not flushing fine today. Like there are certain things where I'm just like, I've hit a wall. I don't know how to fix it. And then there's like technical issues where I'm like, okay, give me a second. Everybody breathe. Give me a second.
You
I'm
never
trying
know what
to
you're
help
going to
you.
wake up to. Yeah, because like one thing could be working so well the night before, and then it's like totally broken the next day. You're like, how could it have broken overnight? You know, it's new adventures every day.
And
Sarah.
often it's like, I mean, the root of the issue, I still don't totally know what happened over here, but we've got a Google Wi-Fi network, so it's a mesh network, and there are little routers all over the place.
Yeah, we have
The
one of those too.
internet's very good, but there is, there's a modem, and then there's sort of like the king router, right, that all the other routers talk to, and that's in a particular place. And I was like, well, let's just unplug some stuff and plug it back in and see if we, kind of magically get everything spinning again, which is what worked. So I'm like, when someone's like, well, what happened? I'm like, I don't know.
It's hard
I mean,
to explain.
I don't know what to tell you, but
It's hard to
I think I
explain the
fixed it.
internet stuff. I mean, the Wi-Fi is just like, it's hard to explain that. I mean, I don't think people expect, but it is funny. People like want to know what happened specifically, and you're like, I don't know, it just went down. Can't you be like happy with that answer?
Well, I mean, I'm not happy with it either, but things do happen. It's like, I don't know, cords get pissed. You got to just, jiggle things back and forth. Well, anyway, enough about internet issues. I think, we're doing the show now, so obviously things are okay. But I did have, besides being a little sunburned, I'm really not sunburned, but the sun and the ocean breeze really kind of took it out of me over the weekend, although it was really fun. But I also had another little bit of an adventure, and that was going to the grocery store. A couple stores, actually. I just had to kind of do chores yesterday without a mask. And for anybody, I know it's totally different depending on where you are in the world, but in the state of California on June 15th, governor mandated mask lifting. It was, sort of like the great unveiling of everyone's faces again. And, that is, for the most part, it means that you don't have to wear a mask if you're fully vaccinated. But no one's really checking. You just kind of, bit of an honor system. However, private establishments can still choose to require people to wear masks, and they're still required in things like hospitals and, the Humane Society of the county that I live in, for example, all mask stuff. Don't ask me how I know that. I just do. But it's like, so it is a bit of a case by case thing, but it's, heading in the right direction, for everybody who's kind of looking for life to feel like it's going back to normal. So, and I kind of forgot, like, it wasn't like I had it like on my calendar, like the 15th of June, but I had to run into the market that's nearby me just to pick up something really quick in the morning. And I walk in, I got my mask, and the person behind the counter, because I know everybody who works there, she's not wearing a mask. And I'm like, oh yeah, oh my gosh, I don't have to, I'm not, that's weird. And she's like, oh yeah, we don't have to anymore. Like, should I put mine on? And I'm like, no, you work. I mean, do whatever you want. I'm just, I've already got it on, so I'm just going to leave it on. Like I wasn't going to be in there very long anyway. And it just felt so weird to like take off my mask while I was in the store after walking through the threshold.
It's like you're naked. It's like, it feels like you're like,
it just
you're like
felt
missing
like I
your
was just
pants
like,
or something.
Yeah, like I was like, oh, I'm not ready. I'll do it next time. And that was, however long ago. But then I actually went inside the same store, like the next day, but now it was on my mind. And so I had my mask in my pocket, just like, who knows, like maybe, something changes. And I noticed that on their front door where they have like lots of like no mask, no entry kind of stuff, all that's gone. So I walk in, no mask, and I look at who's working behind the counter. I was like, no mask. And he's like, no mask, and we're kind of like, okay, cool. And, I got what I was getting. And so that was like, okay, that's one store that I know how it works. And but over the weekend I had to go to, a big grocery store, do my grocery stuff. And again, I'm like, well, let's see, because maybe they're just still doing masks. I don't know. And they had a very sort of dramatic, lots of signage this whole time outside, like, do not come in without a mask type of a thing. And all of that was gone. So I walk in and, well, actually, that's not true. Most of it was gone, but there was a sign. It was sort of inconspicuous, but I mean, I did see it, but I kind of had to look for it as I was walking in. That was like, if you are fully vaccinated, meaning, well, not everybody did a double dose. It depends on the company that you use. But if you are fully vaccinated, you do not need to wear a mask. If you want to wear a mask, that's fine. And if you're not fully vaccinated, you need to wear a mask. And I'm like, cool. Got it. I am fully vaccinated, not wearing a mask. So I walk in and I look around and I see like the woman behind the cheese counter who works there, no mask. And I'm like, okay, well, she works there. So like, I'm following her lead. And I would say there were about 75% of people did not have masks on. And boy, were we smiling at each other.
Yeah.
It was I mean, I would say high five city, but we're still not touching. But, it was like, there was just like so much like joy where you're like, oh my God, whole face, look.
Yeah,
whole face.
I had a similar experience. I'm half vaxxed, but I still wore my mask, but like people, it was like 50-50 maybe. And it was a trip, like going into the store. I mean, I was wearing mine, but it's funny. Over the course of the last year, I've been visiting this wine shop. It's like a small kind of boutique wine shop. And there's one guy, he owns it. He's always at the counter. And I go in there once every 2 weeks, maybe once every week, depending on my wine supply for the last year. And him and I have become kind of buds because I'll go in there and we'll talk about wine for like a while and I'll just like hang out with him. He'll give me some tastings and whatnot. And I go in there, I've seen him 50 times in the last year with a mask on. I go in there. I've never seen his face before. I've never seen his nose. I've never seen his mouth ever. And I'm like, kind of like, this is like my buddy, but like, and then I just could not stop staring at his nose and his mouth because I was like, wow, like he just looked like a different person than I had imagined. And it's kind of funny how that experience, that unveiling, as you say, is kind of a big deal, especially with people that you did not see before and became close to over time, like with masks on. It's such a trip.
Yeah. And it was like, I don't know, in a way, because I was like, once we go to like the big grocery store, maybe I'll feel, I don't know, like just like feel the drama of it all. And honestly, like besides just kind of the novelty where I'm like looking around and I'm like, it kind of just feels like the early days of the pandemic where like masks weren't required yet, but you started to see them. It felt exactly like that. Like, oh, I see some. But a lot of people aren't wearing them. But we're just on the other side of it. Anyway, so that was a grocery store. And then I had to go into the hardware store to get something. And it was actually kind of funny. This hardware store in our Discord chat, someone was like, oh, the hardware store with the basketball. I'm like, different hardware store. But hardware stores in general are kind of like, they kind of have narrow aisles and they're kind of packed with things. So, and this hardware store is sort of a big hardware store, but same idea. Like you're kind of, when you pass somebody in the hardware store, there's not a ton of room.
Yeah.
And, and again, it's mask optional. So I wasn't wearing mine. And every time I go into this particular hardware store, I always like maybe I'll just look at the succulents. And then I'm like poring over the succulents for a while. And I'm like, Sarah, don't buy any more plants. You have so many plants. You already have to like repot plants that you've already bought. Like no more plants. So I'm in there kind of longer than I needed to be. And at one point, an older guy, elderly. He was an elderly gentleman. I don't know exactly how old, but he was old. He comes up to me. He's wearing a mask, and I wasn't even really paying attention to him. And he says, excuse me, do I not need to wear my mask? And I, because he's looking at me and I'm not. And I'm like, well, if you're fully vaccinated, you don't have to, but you can if you want, because I'm sort of like, I'm not your teacher.
You're like, I haven't set the rules.
And he kind of goes, well, I don't know if I am. And I was like, well, you probably just wear it. And he sort of, he's like, yeah. And so he kind of goes on his way, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, I don't know about that one. Just wear it if you're not sure. And then I'm over in some other section, and I noticed this woman who's wearing a mask, who's not like, I mean, she's not like being like weird necessarily, but she's kind of looking at me and sort of following me around. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe she's looking for like whatever I'm looking for. And so I'm just kind of in her way. She's trailing me a little bit, but it was weirder than that. So she's wearing a mask, and she's weirded out by me not wearing a mask, but she like didn't get the memo that June 15th has come and gone, or just, I don't know, is like on some other planet, and gets an employee who's also not wearing a mask, brings the employee over to me, and does not address me directly once, but says to the employee, I want to get clarification as to why I have to wear a mask, but she isn't wearing a mask.
Oh boy.
And the employee's like, well, are you vaccinated? And the woman, like, I don't even kind of like, I was just like, oh God, because I'm like,
Your
this
worst
is like,
nightmare.
well, it's like, I don't even know if passive aggressive is the word for what was going on. She like could have just been like, hey, why aren't you wearing a mask to me?
Sure.
But it was like, she was sort of like, I don't know, she was looking for a fight.
Yeah.
And whatever, I don't even know what conversation, I just was like, oh my God, I'm just going to like keep, going about my day. And she's just sort of disappeared, and that was the end of it. And I saw the employee later, and she kind of rolled her eyes at me, and we laughed, and that was, I didn't even like, I don't know, I just didn't want to engage. But it was just a funny thing where I'm like, some people they just want conflict. Yeah. And that was what I felt like was going on there. It's like, you could totally have just like not heard that masks were becoming non-mandatory. You could have just not heard that. I mean, I'd be surprised if you hadn't heard it, especially if you're out in public, but like, that's possible. But just such a strange way to like address the issue.
Yes.
Where like, it's meant to make me feel super uncomfortable. And I'm like, girlfriend, I am not uncomfortable. Like, try harder.
Yeah, that is odd. I mean, I think, people are very afraid of confrontation, and doing that kind of passive confrontation through somebody else probably just makes them feel more comfortable. But that is odd. It's like, just stay home if you're really gonna have such an issue with it. I don't know. Yeah, it's a crazy world, Sarah. It is interesting to see too how every place is just different. And I did go into the grocery store, and just it was a trip. It's a trip to feel this whole new world, really. I'm been more and more grateful to, even though things are opening up, I still feel kind of grateful that I'm kind of tucked away in my little Northland, little paradise. And speaking of, we see a lot of deer around here. We see fox, we see rabbits. I mean, we see quite a bit of like wildlife, which is great. I love that. And the deer love our property because we have so many wonderful, tasty flowers. And the other night, it was around like after 9 o'clock, so like the sun just went down, or was like almost down, because it's like getting dark so late now. It's kind of a trip. And this whole family of deer with, just like the mama or the dad with the big antlers. I usually see the babies more often. I don't usually see the parents. But it was 3 babies, and well, they were like, let's say kids, and they weren't like just born. And then there was like the dad or the mom, and I've never seen anything like this. It was like, of course, I've seen hundreds of deer in my life, but they did not know we were looking because we were watching out the window. They were doing a full-on, like adorable, like it was like the happy dance. It was like you could tell they were happy. They were like frolicking, and they were jumping over each other. And they were trotting and just doing their little like hoppy thing. And they were hopping over each other. I mean, it was the cutest thing I've ever seen. And I mean, they were doing that for like 15 minutes. It was like I was watching like a theater production. It was very cool. So that happened. Other than that, I mean, so much happens every week, Sarah. I mean, where to begin? But I did get my hair cut. And I took
congrats.
Super. I'm really happy. I was kind of liking my long hair, but I decided to do kind of like a spunky, lob, which is, if you don't know what that is, it's a long bob. And I'm blonde, and I was sort of excited to do something different for the spring/summer, and I really love it. Also, a big deal. Yesterday was Father's Day, and it was kind of a hard day for me. But I had scheduled my dad's obituary to post in the San Francisco Chronicle on Father's Day because I thought that would be sweet, and it did, and it made the front page, and it was quite a thing. I mean, it was a trip, and I got up early and went and got my cron, and just sort of, it was just so surreal and strange to see it all just in a paper, and it's starting to just feel like, okay, this happened, and it's sort of like a milestone of some kind, and feeling good about it. I think it was the right thing to do. So I spent the day kind of in the gardens and the strawberry patch and the places that, my dad loved, and I planted a bunch of stuff for him. And so it was like a bittersweet day.
Yeah. I kind of hadn't thought about that. Father's Day used to bother me. It doesn't anymore. My dad died a long time ago. It's also just, it's not his birthday.
Yeah.
It wasn't, a day that we made a big deal out of. It used to bother me because, especially now with social media, it's like everybody,
it's hard.
like every single holiday it's like a big, you have to be like, I mean, if you have, especially like if you're married, it has to be like, Happy Father's Day, just the best partner ever.
Oh my gosh.
And all of those posts, like by themselves, are lovely.
Sure.
But collectively, sometimes you're like, okay, we got it. You know, like,
exactly.
and I'm just like a salty motherfucker about that kind of stuff anyway. But Father's Day used to bother me, like when I would get an email from like a store chain and be like, this Father's Day, get your dad this thing that's on sale. Like I would be like shakenly like upset.
Yeah.
Like, how can you send that to me? I don't even have a dad. And I've gotten over it, but it took a while.
Yeah.
And so I kind of forgot that would have been a tough, because it's a milestone for you. It's a milestone you didn't want, but
No.
it still is, and you're going to have to deal with it next year and kind of process it.
Yeah, and the problem is that my dad loved, as much as he didn't like Hallmark holidays, if we like didn't get a card here on time, he would kind of be sad. It's like we're such a like greeting card family. I've mentioned this before, and it was just weird not to write a card to him. Like I always look forward to finding the funniest card I can find, and making a joke about how old and rickety he is and blah blah blah. And it's like we enjoyed Father's Day, and so that was one of the reasons why I decided to post on Father's Day. But healing is happening, and I'm doing all right. I'm just it depends on the day and the moment, but I'm just sort of like I'm obviously sinking my mind into my home improvement stuff, and there's a lot going on. It's very busy at the house. I kind of am enjoying the chaos, and I worry a little bit that when the chaos ends, I'm gonna miss it, which trust me, I mean, I like a peaceful household, but I've gotten so used to having people in the house, especially my workman who I adore and want him to just move in. And he's been here for a month, every single day, well, 5 days a week. And so I know it's kind of coming to an end, probably in a week or two. And we have a couple problems that have popped up. Sarah, I mean, just like problems all the time. I mean, it's just like a leak over here, and then there's like a broken pipe, and then there's a broken window. Like our greenhouse door just busted, so I got to get that fixed. And I got this new oven. So I know probably a lot of you can relate to this. The supply chain has been really screwed up over the last year because of the pandemic. And there's not enough workers manufacturing these items, a lot of problems with appliances, and just, different sort of like home improvement type of things are hard to get, like flooring and paint and whatnot. So I had bought this stove like a long time ago. I want to say like February. And it's taken a long time to get here. It finally arrived after many promises that it would arrive even sooner, but that's okay. I had other things to do, but I had talked extensively to my main workman he's the guy that like knows the property really well. He has tons of history here. He worked for my dad for over 20 years. And so of course I made sure that like this stove's going to fit, measurement, everything. I switched from electric to propane. Want to make, because I got a gas stove and currently we have an electric. And so I just wanted to make sure everything was like kosher. And so all good, is like, yep, it's super easy. Just a little switch over. You just have to get your stove converted, got it converted. It's beautiful, beautiful stove. I'm so excited. And so the guy delivers it. We painstakingly pull out the like electric stove, put it in the garage, get the other one through the door, get it in the hole, like pull, whatever, do the whole thing. And then we sort of realize, well, wait, there's actually no hookup. There's no plumbing like coming up through the floor. Like there's just an electrical socket. So my guy was wrong. He was mistaking it for another house on the property, but we don't have a hookup. So I'm like, oh, great. Like this whole process of like buying this new stove, thinking it's going to be like this, I'm going to create this perfect little existence. But no, now we're like back to the drawing board. You got to get under the house and create a line
some
and do
wiring
the whole thing.
And
then my last thing is I bought some new sconces. Some people don't know what sconces are. The girl at the hardware store didn't know what I was talking about, which I thought was interesting. But they're just like, wall lights.
I figured people knew what sconces were.
It was funny that the hardware store didn't know. I was like, you're a hardware store worker. Anyway.
Wall light. Where are your wall lights?
Exactly. Yeah. And they just need to be wired in, and you can kind of buy... you can buy different kinds and you can kind of rewire. I mean, you can kind of change it up if you want to. They're not like, it's not a permanent thing. And there's some sconces that are kind of old lady in my bathroom. So I got these really cool new ones that are more me. And I thought, oh, so easy. It's easy to wire these things up. Nope. The drywall under there was cut so poorly, and apparently this is a thing. I never knew about drywall, but we put the new sconce on, and like it's all cut up around it, like it doesn't fit properly because the drywall was cut so bad. And so now I have to find a thing called a goof ring, which I'm like, what is that? Never heard of it. None of these hardware stores know what I'm talking about, but it's a thing. So I'm trying to find this thing that apparently exists that I can't find. And I'm just like, man, you buy a new thing thinking you're just going to perfect your situation, only to open up a whole new can of worms of work.
Yeah.
But I guess such is life, Sarah. And I'm just gonna take it one day at a time.
Yeah, I had a kind of a similar thing happen. I mean, I don't own where I live. My landlord owns where I live, but there are a couple home improvement things that we always meant to get to when I moved in. For example, there's a washer and dryer on the property, but when Airbnb people live there, before like we got up and running, it was always like, because the laundry room has its own entries, and it's like, it's a whole area that's off the house. Like you're not going into like, it's barely a laundry room. It's more of like a mud room.
Yeah.
And I would be able to go in and out. And the idea was always just like, oh, I have access to the washer and dryer. Everybody does. And you just, obviously have to like, if someone's using it, then you wait.
Yeah.
And that quickly became like untenable. I don't do a ton of laundry, but it's like, it's way too weird to have people that are, wanting privacy and doing their own laundry and blah, 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 and having me coming in and out, especially because like I sometimes do laundry like kind of late because I'm like, oh, that's when I thought of it. I want to do my sheets and like sleep in a like, super clean sheet bed tonight kind of thing. It's like, you don't want me like over on the side of the house doing it. It's just weird. So then the idea was, oh, we'll just put a washer and dryer in the garage, which I've turned into my recording studio and also kind of my workout area, but it's a big garage. There's plenty of room. And I was like, that's great. Not only, does it give me my own thing, but like, there's so much room. It's perfect. It just helps everybody to have an extra set. But, because again, like it's like internet issues, pretty good with things like putting in a washer and dryer. Sarah knows nothing. I'm like, I don't know. You just like, there's some room over in the corner. And there was a guy who came out who's like a handyman who, does all sorts of things. And this would have been something that he could do. And he was like, yeah, but we can't drill through the concrete. Yeah, that wall isn't going to work. We would have to put it on that wall. And I'm like, oh, that's like a much weirder wall. I wouldn't think I would put washer and dryer on that wall, but like, okay. And then he's like, yeah, and we've got to tap like a water source on the other side of the wall. Cause like there's no water coming in to the garage anywhere. There's no sink. So we have to like, And there actually happens to be like a hose hookup that is right on the other side of the wall, but it's just like it's like a hose, you turn it on and you like water some plants. And he was like, so would you be cool with just cold water? Like, do you need hot water for the washer dryer? And I was like, yeah.
Yeah,
I was
kinda.
like, it's funny because like I almost always wash everything cold because I'm trying to like preserve things.
Sure.
But you still want to have the option.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And so he's like, yeah, so the deal is that we have to like, there's like you need like a heating source that needs to now be part of this equation. You can't just make hot water happen, like if it's coming in cold, you have to heat it. And I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, but I'm like, so like, because to me, I'm like, I don't know, we just wheel the washer and dryer in and then we put them against the wall and then I do laundry. And it's like, nah, there's a way bigger project going on here to the point where I'm like, I don't even care that much. Like, I don't want like, we're like drilling through concrete and adding heaters and blah, blah, blah. It's like the landlord will pay for it. I mean, again, this just like, it ups the value for everyone. It's not just me being weird about it, but it just still hasn't happened yet because it's like, oh, there's just more to it than everyone thought.
Oh, there always is. I mean, we just pulled up some old linoleum from our washroom and I thought, oh, this is so easy. I got this new linoleum. It's like all cut and everything. No, the floor under it was so poorly built that we had to kind of rebuild the floor. So yeah, I mean, I think it's like it's par for the course, I believe.
Yeah. Well, I have mentioned on the show before that I don't even know if I've mentioned on the show before. I certainly think about it all the time, but I probably have because we talk about everything.
100
here.
episodes, you probably have 100 plus.
Yeah, exactly. It's like 105. It's probably been mentioned, but I am. Like and this sort of plays back into me being like rigid schedule, good for me. It helps me stay on course, because I can spin my wheels really easily, if I don't have enough structure. And that also applies to things like, food and exercise. And, I know that when I say this out loud, sometimes people are probably like, God, Sarah, like, it's just like, she's a little bit like overly methodical about this stuff. But it's just like, I like what I like. I know, for example, like I make a meal, and I'm like, okay, I'm making like enough for 3 people. So that's like lunch tomorrow and maybe dinner tomorrow or maybe lunch the next day. Like, it's like, this is all kind of, it's all a big, game of Tetris. And that said, I will kind of like my weekend where it's like, oh, I did like fun things that I don't usually do on the weekend. And it sort of threw everything else out of whack a little bit. And I'm like still sort of struggling to like get back on, on the train. And that goes for food as well. And one of my things is that I have very little self-control. And that's like, it's like, I don't know why that is. Like, it's almost like when people say, oh, I have an addictive personality. And it's like, oh, are you like addicted to anything in particular? It's like, well, yeah, sometimes people are. But sometimes they're like, I lose my cool really easily with things, like I have to stay away from stuff where like I'm gonna not have enough self-control. And so sometimes you're like, oh, if that was like heroin or something, that'd be like a real big problem. But like for me, a lot of that has to do with like, it's almost like an impulse buying thing, like a not like a shopping addiction, but just that impulse where you're like, just do it really quick before you even think about it. Just do it really quick. And that can apply to lots of things. And I do that with like, for example, I made these crappy ass brownies last night and it was like late at night. Like I should have just gone to bed. I don't know what I was doing, but yeah. And they're just like, they're cakey and I don't know why. Like, I'm like, what am I missing? I'm missing something here. I used to make brownies that were perfectly fine. Now they're just like not chewy and gooey the way I want them to be. They're like cakey. So they taste fine, but the consistency is all wrong. Anyway, it's like one of those things where I'm like, should I make brownies? No, it's too late. Like, what are you going to do? Just like eat a bunch of brownies right now? Like, who are you going to give them to tomorrow? Nobody, because you're not going to see anybody. But then I make them anyway. I'm like, no, Sarah, I'm just going to do this weird thing. And that's what I'm doing because I have no self-control. And so I made the brownies. They're like sitting on the top of my stove, under tinfoil right now. Because I had a couple last night and I'm like, ugh, terrible again. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Got to go back to the hardware store and buy more Pyrex, I guess. But it's like, I'm like, why did I do that? It was almost like I was like showing myself like, you know better, but you're gonna do the stupid thing right now, and like you're gonna like and it's like kind of on purpose. And like, who suffers? Well, nobody really. I mean, it's just a really weird self-control thing that I don't understand why I do things like this. Now, it's not even that I want, like, oh, people go like, oh my God, I have a sweet tooth so badly, I'm like, I have to like go buy brownies, or like a bunch of cookies at the store or whatever.
It's
like
something.
like it's like, I'm like, that would be a different kind of impulse. And that's not really what I was doing. Mine was much more methodical. And I don't like, again, it's like, I don't even really know where I'm going with this, except to say there's this weird self-control thing where I'm like relishing in it falling apart at times. And like, I don't know like what's to be lost or gained, but it's like this weird thing that I do.
Well, I think that there's, we are complex beings, and there's things that you do consciously that your brain sends a signal to your hand to move it, and there's things that are like biological, but then there's like your subconscious and all these other layers that sort of motivate you to do things. And I think that, there's something definitely mysterious there. But you just run with it. You had a strong feeling to move forward on baking these brownies for one reason or another. I mean, was it satisfying? It wasn't, I guess. If they came out chewy, would it have been satisfying?
I don't know. Yeah, I've had a couple rounds now. I also don't, brownies are just one of the easiest things to bake. I also like to bake banana bread, but like you have to have bananas that are like overly ripe and they have to be there. And there's a whole, it's like just like one more layer of complexity. Brownies, it's like, do you have butter and sugar and flour? You're good.
I thought brownies were made with oil. I think that's what makes them chewy.
You can, it depends.
I'm pretty sure.
Well, it depends. It depends.
Okay.
If you're
you
using
know more about brownie baking than I do.
Yeah, a majority of from scratch brownie recipes, because I'm not doing like brownies out of a box.
Yeah.
Because the whole point is like to make a mess.
Oh, I see. You're doing it more from scratch. Yeah, I guess you're right. Like I'm used to the box brownies that my mom used to make, and it was always
but oil can be an ingredient. There's so many different ways to make brownies. But
sure.
But I don't know. I don't know. I sometimes just marvel at like just like the weirdness of, the lack of self-control. And it's like, I don't know. I think about this all the time because it's like, when people will say sort of in a joking way, like, oh, it's my OCD. And I'm like, I don't actually love it when people say that, because some people actually do have obsessive compulsive issues.
And they take like drugs for it.
And can be really debilitating and harmful, and and cause a lot of stress and confusion and all of that stuff. And so it's like, no, that is not what I'm talking about. And I wouldn't say that I'm doing anything that's like a clinical, mental issue.
Yeah.
But it's like a weird repetitive thing where it's like I'm testing myself kind of. And I go in one direction or another, and I don't know, maybe I just lived alone too long, like it could just be just like, I don't know, I'm just like finding ways to like create drama in my life,
maybe
just for me.
Brownie
and that's
drama.
Just like, it just happens to be like, me in the kitchen at 10 p.m. on a Sunday. But I will continue to test my various methods and get back
I like
to
this.
y'all.
I'd like to call it kind of like low grade, like homebody drama or something,
There you go. Yeah.
It's like, that could actually, I like that theory, that hypothesis that it might be a way of just creating a little bit of drama in sort of a routine life.
Right.
I think about those things too, Sarah, all the time. That's why we're weird. But anyway, I know, how people say you just meet people, or, someone might say to you, oh, I'm such an old soul, or like, I just kind of that, he's such an old man. It's not necessarily an insult, but to like a younger person who thinks, yeah, I'm kind of old manish. Well, I think I'm kind of more on the youthful side. Like, and I'm not saying this is better or worse than being an old lady, but I just feel like I've always leaned into this spunky thing, and I've always like really kind of enjoyed my youth, and it's always been a big part of my identity. And so, like we all grapple with subtle ravages of age are always hard to accept. And for everybody, it's different. And there's obviously a stigma. And, I think about these kinds of things. I wonder about them, and I have passing thoughts, and I talk to friends about them and whatnot. And, it's just part of life. But it is really helpful when like something pops up on the internet, or you read in a magazine, or, in your online publication, and it's something about this thing you keep thinking about, and it kind of helps you feel better about it, I guess. Something where you can really relate to the way it was written and sort of feel better about it, because it's a collective experience. You're not the only one going through it. I know for me, whenever I find out someone else is going through something, I sigh of relief, because, oh, I'm not crazy. Like, this is a normal thing, kind of thing. So yeah, I came across this newsletter. It's called Gloria. I don't know if you've heard of it, Sarah. It's hellogloria.com. And it's so funny because it kind of reminds me of our show on some level, because we tend to talk about being kind of middle-aged, like in our 40s, and kind of like what we're grappling with at this time in our lives, and what does our future hold, and that kind of thing. So this newsletter is really great, and it's actually created by two women who have been in the media industry for a long time, and they're in Brooklyn, and they're in their 40s. They're not quite yet old, as they say, but they aren't young either. We're kind of young-ish. And it's kind of a newsletter for women who are kind of in midlife, thinking like, what does my life look like when I still feel like 25, kind of thing. Anyway, they have articles like, you're not young anymore and it's fine, just be okay with it. And, making peace with your lower back tattoo. And is this expensive cream worth the money? It's so funny. And I know a lot of my friends relate to this, because I've kind of sent this out to them. And their whole point is to help kind of deprogram this, like, there is a stigma, especially about women, about getting older. And, our society is very youth obsessed, and it's hard to age. And, we're not spring chickens anymore, but it's always considered this midlife crisis sort of thing. And it always has this negative connotation, but they're trying to kind of turn it around. Like, no, this is actually great. This is a jumping off point to the rest of our lives, kind of thing. And I think it's really cool. So I want to know from you guys, are you kind of like a forever young-ish kind of person, or are you an old soul? Please email us at hi@havesuchagoodday.com.
I'm glad that you like your newsletter. I'm not a newsletter person myself. I subscribe to a couple of newsletters, but in general, it feels very spammy to me. If you sign up for a newsletter, it's not spam because you signed up. Sure. But there are a couple that I get in my inbox where I'm like, yeah, I got to read this because it's like news related. It's going to help me with my job. Everything else, I'm just like, no. I also, and I don't know what this says about me, but anything that's like too women oriented bothers me. It just does. There's something about like, hey, I'm talking to you because we're alike, and I'm like, you don't know me. It's just like there's something slightly off-putting about it, even though that is totally generalization blanket statement, and I have not checked this out, and I might like it very much, but yeah, I hear you. I hear you on the it's all what you make of it. This life that we're leading, whatever age you're at. And I don't know. When I was younger, I spent a lot of time wanting to seem older than I was. I mean, I'm talking like a long time ago, where you're like, when you're not an adult yet, you want to seem grown up, and then when you're a young adult, it's like, well, you want to like act a little bit more like the people that are 10 years older than you because they seem like they've got it all made, and then you get to a certain point and you're like, holy shit, now I want to be younger. Like, when did that happen? Yeah. And then you kind of do this, you do this thing where you're like, oh, what are the kids doing? I mean, I say that all the time. And it's like, I don't totally care how much a like Gen Z person is going to like relate to something differently than me. But you hear yourself starting to say that because you're not up on the hip stuff, because you're just not that person anymore. And it's like, do you want to be that person? Okay, well, you'll chase it then. You're going to chase it. Yep. Or do you just not care and then you seem out of touch? And like, is there some happy medium? I don't know.
It's a good question. Yeah. Well, let us know what you guys think. Hi@havesuchagoodday.com.
Indeed. I mentioned Patreon at the top of the show, but we'll mention it again before we wrap up here. We are directly supported by our patrons, of whom we love very, very much.
Dearly.
Patreon.com/have such good days, where you can find out more about becoming a patron and directly supporting us, get an ad-free show, get access to our Discord where we chat amongst ourselves in between shows. It's super fun. We've got a great group in there. Hello, everybody in our Discord.
Yo.
And yeah, we just really appreciate your support. You don't have to become a patron to listen to the show. It's free for all, but this is how we kind of grow the show, and we have some lofty goals, and the more of you that we have, the more we can make those dreams come true. So thank you in advance.
Yeah, man. Thank you. This has been such a fun ride. Thank you for riding along with us.
Indeed.
So we got an email from Ron. He was saying that, it was a couple episodes ago, Sarah, when you talked about the trash can, the ghost garbage or something, where it got moved into the middle of the road. He wants to know, did you ever figure out what was going on there?
Ron. Well, yes. Actually, when I said yes, I meant yes. I remember what you're talking about. No, I never figured out what was going on. I have to assume it was just like a neighbor being weird.
Yeah.
There's just no other real answer for it. It's not like the garbage delivery people related, because I see them come by, like they're on a schedule. It hasn't happened recently. It's like, it's not them. Yeah, that would also just be really weird if I'm like, yeah, it's my garbage man himself. Like, he's like trying to send me a message. No, it was just like a weird thing. It was a weird thing that happened a couple of times, like in succession, where I'm like, what is happening? Like, what is the message? I don't get the joke. And it hasn't happened since. So who knows? Like, maybe a neighbor was just like pissed at me for some other reason, and that's the best that they could do.
Maybe because you put your poop bag in their garbage can.
Well, this is before. And that person lives like way up the hill. Like, they don't even know where I live. But
that'd
who
be
knows?
funny though.
Who knows? It's yet one more of life's mysteries. But Ron, if I do come across that again, or I have any sort of like a lead on who the perp might be, I will let you know on a subsequent episode. If you have anything that's on your mind, anything that we talk about, or anything that you want Heather and I to tackle, discuss on a future episode, unpack, indeed, hi@havesuchagoodday.com is where to send that email. We love hearing from you, so do talk to us, because we will read and we will listen.
Early and often, email us, please. Well, Sarah, I think we're coming to a close here.
We are.
I can't believe another episode in the can.
It is. It's in the can. Indeed it is. It's been fun. By the way, I saw somebody drinking oat milk out of a can.
Oh,
I know. And I was just like, oh,
that's so
I was just like, why is it in a can? I don't know. Is that
also
weird?
Do you
I don't
drink
know.
a glass of oat milk? I mean, I don't. I mean, maybe I should.
I sometimes will drink. I will drink a small glass of. Well, I don't really drink oat milk, but I do drink Ripple milk, which is made from pea protein.
Yeah,
I'm sure I've talked about this before. I just like it. It's like an almond milk. It's not unlike
nice and thick.
An alternative milk. Yeah, and and I think, like, if that was in a can, would that be weird? And I'm like, I feel like it would be weird, but why do I feel like it would be weird? I don't know. Maybe more things should be in cans. I don't know. We'll think about that one. We'll ruminate, and we will come back and unpack it further on episode 106. But until then, hope you have a wonderful week. I will remain Sarah.
And I will remain Heather.
Have such a good day.
Bye.